All right, welcome to our AMA with Alan Davenport, who is joining us from Bangkok, Thailand today. Hi, Alan. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay. It's good to be here. Good to see you. Wow,
Yeah,
let's do this thing.
we're really excited to have you. Actually, before we get into the nitty gritty of your ELT experience, can you tell us what brought you to ELT in the first place?
Oh gosh, I mean, I think like most of the people who have been in ELT for a while, it's not the story of, this was my life's dream. I think that's fair to say with most people you ask. I've always been in some form of education. Back in America, where I'm from, I left university. Well, I never actually left university. I graduated with my bachelor's degree, got a master's degree, started teaching during my master's degree, and then after my master's, stayed at university and did some teaching there.
Wait,
Left Oklahoma, where I'm from. Well, I started at Oklahoma State University, and then I did some teaching at the University of Tulsa, and then I moved to Sonoma State University in California, where I did some residential education, also taught some leadership and psychology classes there, or can't really say psychology, but psychology of leadership, that sort of stuff. And then ELT came about because, well, there was a job that I really wanted at Sonoma State University, but the person who was in that job had a year before they retired and my contract was up, so I needed something to do for a year. And what do? You go teach English, right? So it was going to be 1 year teaching, abroad, just to help out, do the whole, volunteer sort of thing, and then forgot to go home. Isn't that
Oh, wow.
isn't that the story? That was in 2006.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so yeah, that's the story. Just start becoming an English teacher. Um, got involved with an organization I really enjoyed working with that was affiliated with an Australian university. Did a lot of EAP and pre-college programs, and through that I got into testing and assessment, which I actually love doing. I know that sounds very nerdy. And then kind of became a campus manager, and then the academic coordinator, and then the next thing you know, here I am in a new career. So it's like I said, do any of us really come? I mean, I think you have somewhat of a similar story, don't you? I mean,
Right.
it
We come
wasn't
for one year
the,
and
yeah, come from 1 year and then look at us
2 years
now. But
maximum.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's it.
how did you end up in Thailand specifically then?
Oh gosh, again, not a great story. Everything that we're gonna get if we're talking on this lines is just accidents and saying yes. I when I was looking for a job to teach overseas, I was looking at Japan and Korea because I knew that it paid, at that time pretty good. And so I went to Japan for a week, had some interviews set up, decided while I'm here, let me go to Thailand for a week just for a little holiday. And then, go to Korea for some job interviews after that week of being in Thailand. But while I was, this sounds too crazy to be true, but it is. While I was in Thailand on holiday, the hotel that I was staying at had a conference that was going on in its lobby while I was staying there, and it was an ELT conference. And I met the director of studies over breakfast at one of the institutions that I wound up working at, and he was like, oh, just ELT folk are friendly folk, right? Started talking, and he's like, why aren't you looking at Thailand? I said, well, I've heard the stories. I'm not this type of guy that pays. He's like, it really is a land of professionals. Think about this, think about that. Kept in touch. When I came back over, there was a fairly good job waiting for me here, because I didn't know, Lindsay. I thought everybody who comes to Asia has like a master's in education
Hmm.
and has all this stuff. I didn't know that it was,
Not that way.
I didn't know that it was not that way, and I think that's why I was really happy to find what I did, because it wasn't that he just shuffled me into, a good school in Thailand, but I was surrounded with professionals right away, and it really, I had to take the blinders off of thinking that there aren't professionals in this field just because it is in Thailand. There are professionals everywhere and there are jackasses everywhere. But I was
Right,
lucky.
right.
I was lucky enough to kind of be filtered into a good school full of professional development, growth, and professionalism, and that's why Thailand, and that's pretty much also why I stayed.
That's really cool. So how long have you been in Thailand altogether now?
Yeah, since 2006. I'll let you do the math, and
Okay.
that's why I teach English.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's what is.
that's really cool. So what would you say you learned from that first job? What was the most important thing that you learned from your professional colleagues that has impacted your views of teaching or the way you teach?
The thing that I was worried about most was, I knew I was an okay teacher in America, but would I be an okay teacher in Asia? You worry about the
Mhm.
cultural things. You read all these guidebooks, that tell you things like don't ever touch their heads, and we do this, and
Right,
take off your
right.
shoe. But what I think I learned in that first job was at the fundamentals of teaching, whether it's with adults or kids or anything, we're human before our culture gets in the
Mhm.
way, and good teaching is good teaching anywhere. And I think that's, being in a teacher's room full of people who had taught all around the world, even though this was kind of my first, cultural experience of being outside of America, that there's more similarities in what unites us as being human and our brains and learning. And,
Right.
I'm not saying that culture isn't important,
Mm.
because it certainly is, but sometimes I think, when we worry about teaching abroad or teaching overseas, we lean too much into the cultural differences, forgetting that there's
Definitely.
more that unites us in general, just being humans who eat, sleep, and breathe, than
Right, right.
anything else. And that what works in America sometimes works here. I mean, that you're not reinventing the wheel
Mhm.
with good teaching, or the tricks, or what works.
Right.
So.
Well, that said, was there anything about the culture that you found difficult to adjust to, or anything about teaching in EFL in particular that took a bit of getting used to?
I mean, just in the Asian context, well, well behaved children, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
When I first started teaching, I was teaching the little ones before I got into teaching university, and just the difference, the characteristics of that sort of, I wouldn't say respect, but just what's considered bad behavior in Asia, versus what was considered bad behavior in America at the time. In America, where I was leaving, I should say,
Mhm.
around 2004, 2005. That's when we were just getting off the people who were kind of what I call victims of the self-esteem movement, where you weren't allowed to do anything bad, or don't even grade with a red pen because that's too harsh. And
Right.
it kind of led to all of these discipline just nightmares and sorts of things. So then you come here, and you just give a firm like sit down, and then all the students kind of look at you and sit down, and then you worry like, did I say something wrong? Did I say something bad? Because it shouldn't have been that. Just this combative nature that I may have been bringing with me from, with students. That I think was a big cultural difference, not in the pedagogy aspect, but maybe in the classroom management, and in that sort of aspect of what goes on.
Right. Well, actually, I remember the coming over to Korea to teach for the first time. I had a very similar attitude. I think a lot of Americans do, where it's a students versus teachers kind of attitude, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then I came here. I remember on one of my first days, a student came to me with a Dixie cup full of instant coffee, and he's like, "Teacher, teacher, gift." And I'm like, "What did you do to it?" And he
We're
was
automatically suspect, right?
exactly, exactly, because I know what my classmates did to my teachers when I was in high school. So, oh, that's fun. So you've taught a wide range of classes from kiddies to university students, not only
Yeah,
in Korea but in the
exam
US.
preparation, secondary. Yeah, I mean, in the U.S., it was always college age students, or late seniors in high school. But coming to Thailand, the first job that I got was with with the kiddies running around in a Saturday morning type of school, which was not as bad as I thought it would be. At first I'm like, am I trained for this? But it just goes back to that whole universal, you know good teaching is good teaching sort of mentality. You know how to do it, just kind of get in there and do it, and don't make it more complicated than it is sometimes.
Right.
But what really kept me was, the same thing that I enjoyed about being a, a lecture in America at a university I got by doing like IELTS and EAP courses, because it's you just feel the impact. I mean, it's not just I'm teaching somebody something for no reason. You know, these are students who, you know, English really can't, it may not change their life, but English to them at least represents an opportunity, and you want to help them fulfill whatever that opportunity means to
Right.
them. And it just gives you that sense of purpose. None of us, no matter what we've done, have said, "Oh, I'm going to be a teacher to get rich." You
Right.
know, and
Right.
even if we know the one or two, you know, famous authors or famous speakers who have gotten rich, that's the exception, not the rule. So you have to get that intrinsic reward no matter where you are. And I was just getting a lot of that intrinsic reward in in Bangkok, I would say, you know, in my first years. The problem is, I'll be honest, as you move up into administration, that intrinsic reward starts to go away, and you start to just, you know, you see. You start to wish you were in the classroom more, because that's where it's safe, instead of you know, running away from the classroom and sorts of
Right.
the sorts of things. So that's kind of why I had to leave that institution, because as I was getting more into the academic directing and curriculum development, you just feel really far removed, like I said, from that thing that gives you the day-to-day impactful reward. So
Right. Well, but now you're working for Cambridge University Press, which is very
yes,
much outside the classroom. So
yes.
how is that, and how did you get involved in that?
Well, I applied. I applied for the job just on a lark, thinking that I would never get it, and then I found out when I interviewed that they didn't have as many applicants as I thought that they would. And the person who interviewed me said, you know, yeah, basically, people don't apply for this job because nobody thinks that they'll get it. So let that be a lesson to anybody out there that's watching this AMA. Apply for everything. What's the worst that can happen? They say no.
Right.
They had gone through 3 rounds of interviews and didn't find somebody, so I just came in, and I guess I ticked a few boxes, but there wasn't any special recruitment process. There wasn't any. I just saw an ad in the paper and thought I could do that. I had done the job that I do working for Cambridge doesn't really have to do with sales. It's with professional learning and development and teacher training,
Mhm.
which was the one kind of aspect when I got up to being the academic director, or the assistant program director of my institution. It's the one part that I really liked, because even though you weren't really having as much of an impact day to day on the students that you could see, you get to impact teachers, and you can give teachers ideas, techniques, and things like that. And that's what I view my job as Cambridge is doing. I'm not a bookseller. I'm a pedagogical seller. I don't know, you know, just trying to take what I know and help teachers be better.
Right. And
And
what?
and and I do feel the impact, believe it or not, working for Cambridge, which I think is viewed more of a publisher than an educational institution. I
Right.
have that intrinsic feeling back being here.
That's really cool. So what is a typical day like for you?
Um, Now or usually? I mean, you know, COVID-19 has a typical day for me now is to wake up and hope I don't lose my job. You know, just because we look around it, that's very real stuff, isn't it? But I would say a normal typical job or day for me depends on if I'm on the road or if I'm in the office. If I'm in the office, it will be reading journal articles, trying to figure out catching up and what the trends are, reading the second language acquisition research and trying to with the eye of translating it into practice.
Mhm.
I sometimes say that when I'm in the office, my job is to read the books that teachers wish they had the time to read, and pick out the best part and be able to do it, and then to plan training programs that I think would be beneficial for the region that I'm in, because I focus in Southeast Asia, and then also try to match them to, this is a great idea, about task-based learning or whatever. It would fit with teachers who might be using this course book. There is a tie-in to the course book, but it's that we try to do and try to figure out where this type of pedagogy or methodology fits in, and which of our teachers that use our materials would benefit from it. The other day to day might be if there's a conference coming up. I mean, I I'm lucky enough that people like to be shouted at by a crazy American, I guess. I mean, you've been to one of my
Right,
presentations, you know,
right.
they're very, very shouty, very active. So I get invited to a lot of conferences to talk about what I want. And then it's just a lot of research. I don't think people realize how much research goes into this job, either research that you do, or, you know, you can't work for a publisher and hate reading. That's one of the things that I'll say. I think I overtalked that answer, but if you like that, yeah, that's what it is. A lot of reading and a lot of translating from the world of academia to the world of the classroom, because there's still not enough of a bridge that's built up between the two.
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of people who might be watching this video are probably really enamored with the idea of, you know, getting paid to do what they would like to do and what they're currently doing with some of their free time. So that's really cool. But I wonder, you did
Oh, I
mention,
mean, yeah, I mean, it's go back. I do get paid to do something that I love. It's a special sort of, you know, a nerdy sort of love. But I know you're the same way, Lindsay. I mean, we were talking about, you know, before, you know, literature and all this stuff that we were going in your doctoral program and stuff. And I remember, I think we're having tacos in Korea, and there was a moment where we were just sitting back and thinking, who does this? You know, but
yeah.
you know, it's nice to be again part of a profession where there is real research, but sorting through what's good and what's bad is important. But then being able to take it and giving somebody practical in the classroom that they're like, yes, you know, a lot of my job isn't teaching, you know, new things to teachers. It's just giving validation of, yes, you're doing it right. Or, yeah, that page in the book didn't work for you. Maybe it's because of this, and skip it and do something else. And here's options. And that does give me, I mean, I hope you see it now.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what lights my fire.
That's really cool.
That's what I like. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're right. I do love it, but I don't love it because it's like a ooh, you know, ooh, the money's ooh great. I mean, it gives you no, but it still gives you that great thing. You're still helping people, and in this job, you get to help people help people.
Right.
That's
And
the best.
it sounds as if you have a lot of freedom in the directions you want to go with it too.
Well, yeah, I think, you know, the great thing about Cambridge is it doesn't have a system or a methodology. They expect people in my role to understand a wide variety of them. So, I mean, you know, you got to go into some schools and train teachers and know that their administration expects, you know, a very traditional behaviorist approach. And even though that I may be a social constructivist, I'm not there to evangelize and convince them, you know, to rise up against their principle. You know, you got to kind of go in and say there are some good things about behaviorism. Sometimes, if it's done in a good way, what's a proper way to do some drilling, or what's the proper way to bring in chant? How can I make these behaviors fit to where it still is good pedagogy that matches their curriculum, their expectations, and their outcome? So you know, in my job, you don't get to specialize in any one area, but you need to know, as what I like to sometimes say, just enough to be dangerous in basically a wide variety of areas. So I go wide more than I go deep.
That's interesting. And have you ever had that kind of experience where you were asked to give a presentation on a topic that just really conflicted with your perspectives on what education is and what ELT should be?
Um, when it comes to like methodology in the classroom, I haven't had that yet, because I can find something good in everything. What really irks me, and I think you came to one of my presentations on this before, you know, if I'm ever invited to go to a technology conference,
Mhm.
I like to give presentations that are very anti-technology. I think, you know, and
Right.
they do tend to get mixed reactions
Mhm.
from the room, you know, you know, just because where I get irked is this idea, and I think we're finding it right now in COVID with COVID-19. Ed tech it's great when we have extra resources and extra tools, but it's not the savior of education. It's not replacing anything. And I think one of the things, I mean, you have to be careful what you say. You know, you can't say one of the things I like about a horrendous pandemic virus. That's not what I'm trying to say. But one of the things that I guess the Schadenfreude in me that's kind of seen as this has come out are the good technological platforms have stayed, and they've been used, but the ones who couldn't cut the muster, they're just, you know, they faded away. We can see the flaws in it, because, you know, technology supports good teaching, not the other way around. And so that's it. If there's one, if I'm ever asked to, I was asked to in Indonesia one time give this thing about how education will be disrupted by technology, And I was like, okay, I'll talk about education and technology and disruption. And my whole thing was about how it won't be as disruptive as we see. And you could just see everybody in the room at the end, like, do we clap? Did he just insult us all? But what I like about Cambridge is, as long as I can back up what I think, they'll support it. You know, I mean, if I just go in and espouse unsupported opinions, that would get me in trouble. But as
Right.
long as you have if you can take your line of thinking and present an argument, it's safe.
Oh, sure.
So that's the freedom I have.
Well, I wonder, has there been any particular piece of research that really surprised you or changed your perspective in any way while you've been doing this, while you've been doing your research to support your presentations?
It's not about technology, but the one that really kind of was just a big aha and where I had to stop saying some of the things that I said was this meta study by Dunlosky and others. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's a summary of it called "Strengthening the Student Toolbox," I believe, in American Psychologist, and it's what they did was they looked at 10 things that students that could do that actually improve their learning, you know, or that are supposed to help improve their learning, like does highlighting work, or do mnemonic devices work, or does practice teaching work, or does practice testing work, and all of this sort of thing. And one of the things that I liked about it was, you know, 7 of the things showed no significant difference. One was actually bad, which was highlighting, you know, and coming from Asia, you know, or at least Southeast Asia, some of our students, you know, paint their books more than they actually read them. And you know, they can bring out how detrimental highlighting was. But one of the things that showed the highest results for students was continued practice testing. And that was weird because I had, you know, for 2 years, you know, gone through on assessment, which I did love, but you know, we had that old saying, you know, you don't make a pig fatter by weighing it. You got to make sure that you're not constantly testing and that you're doing that. And it turns out that you can't only test, but weighing the pig in this case does make it a little bit fatter. And I thought that was just kind of an interesting, you know, the impact of testing and and how that did it. Another one, oh gosh, I'm at the top of my head here. I think it was Ruth Butler. I can give you these citations to put in the comments of the videos, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be very
of
cool.
some interesting things to read. Yeah, because I don't want to misquote, and I don't want to, you know, I don't want to lose my job because of an AMA.
Right. We're not,
Um,
don't worry, we're not relying on you
yeah.
to remember all of
Okay.
these details off
Yeah.
the top of your head.
But just so much research about feedback, and one of the things that got me was you know, there was a case where they basically put students in 3 different control groups of one that got a grade, one that got feedback only or comments only on their project, and one that got a grade plus comments. And I was expecting it to kind of go, you know, comments will be great, and then grade, then comments, and grade would be the worst. But it turns out that giving a grade, or giving a grade and including comments, had the same effect, which was like no effect on improvement, and actually lessened some interest in the course.
Huh,
So, you know, I mean, just, yeah, I mean, so
fascinating.
just some, huh. You know, I always knew that it's better to give comments than nothing, but I didn't know it was gonna, that giving a grade plus comments in this case, or at least in this study, would have like just even no better effect than anything. So I mean, it makes me think of what time gets wasted as teachers and that sort of thing. IC Lee has a wonderful paper that she wrote about burning the midnight oil, and talks about the amount of time that teachers put into written corrective feedback versus what comes out of it. And that's something.
That's really nice that
Here's
we've got
trouble if I ever
people
saw it.
joining us.
Here's trouble if I ever saw it. Wait a second, Curtis. I got something for you. Uh, uh, ah. Oh, can't do it. Can you see the eyes? Can you see the eyes in the glasses?
That's funny.
Sorry, but those were 2 research things that I really liked. Curtis Kelly, ladies and gentlemen.
Yay. Hey, Curtis.
Hi,
Sorry,
Curtis.
I meant to come earlier, but I fell asleep.
Oh, that's okay.
That's
I've been
important.
boring Lindsay to death right now, so that's
That was
great.
awesome.
Good to see you, friend. Good to see you.
Yeah, this has been on my calendar with a big red circle. You know, find something to do at this time. But
Sleeping didn't quite cut it, huh?
Yeah. But just so the people know the inside joke, I had a Skype call with I should say Dr. Curtis Kelly. Earlier it was evening, and I have this ring light, and in the glasses it glowed right at my retinas, and he's called me Devil Eyes ever since.
Alan, I hate
So
to tell you
I
this,
was.
but he shared that on the Cotiesel Facebook group.
Did he?
I've
Yeah.
definitely seen that picture.
Yeah. Is this the guy you're going to trust? He comes straight from the pits itself.
Scared them all away.
So, Alan, I'm curious, how do you access all of this research? Does Cambridge have access to all the online journals without any problems?
It's not that we have access to all the journals, but it doesn't take a lot to really get to find out there. I do have subscriptions to Modern English Teacher, to ET Professional, to the ELTJ, which is out of Oxford University Press. Nothing wrong with it. It's a great journal for that. I have access to the Cambridge produced journals, but what you'll find is if you go to somebody's where I really get the the impact is going around to conferences. You get somebody like he's just here. You go to a presentation done by Curtis Kelly, and then you find out that he's got this Jolt Sig, and then this brain ed, and then he sends out monthly all of this hardcore research stuff that you just get into your mailbox. So it's really about networks and connections, and most of the people who have published in these areas that I care about, which are very practical to teachers, like Ken Highland or IC Lee or all of these things, they've put their presentations up on their websites. It just takes some digging. So once you get into that, the stuff really comes up. But I'm not going to lie, I'm also blessed working for Cambridge. I mean, you can see my bookshelf behind, and that's just
very cool.
one of them. I get access to a lot of a lot of the stuff.
So what would you
but
say?
like I said, oh, go on.
Well,
Sorry.
I was just wondering, so what would you say is the best and worst thing about working for Cambridge University Press?
Well, I mean, gosh, I don't want to sound Pollyannish, but there is no worst thing except here's something that I think people don't know about Cambridge University Press. We are a nonprofit organization, and I mean, we have to make a surplus, but we're not all in it for the money. Our margins are very tight, and so you'll see people from other publishers. I won't name them, but they're on a little bit higher expense accounts than I am. They get to stay in little nicer hotels, and they'll be walking to their 4-star thing at a conference, and I'll be heading to. They don't never put me in a dump, but it's not. Being not part of a commercial publisher, you don't get as many perks or as high salary, but you get a lot of the other benefits. What's the best thing? Everything else. I mean, it's helped promote my own profile, which is nice, but they've never made me a shill for Cambridge. Our team, even at the top, believes in doing the right thing, and as long as my values align with theirs, I can stay here for a long time. I get to learn so much. I mean, if it's a terribly drawn out answer, but as I think a lot of our students write in their essays, the benefits far outweigh the disadvantages.
That's very cool. Do you think that's a path that you would recommend to people? Does it have enough job security, do you think, in the future for people who might be considering getting out of teaching proper and moving into something kind of teaching adjacent or teacher training?
I think I think teacher training will always be a job in general. I think that with my job, I mean, for the long-term future, I don't know, but for the short-term future, yeah. I mean, as long as there are places or institutions that will be switching to, quote unquote, international books, or, as long as they keep on updating the CEFR and people want to know what that means, or as long as there's, all of this new research that's coming in, it will need to be translated down. And I think that that's what we do as a teacher trainer with a publisher. I don't view my job, teacher training for Cambridge, any different than any other professional teacher trainer or somebody who goes into an institution that tries to help teachers be better. And as long as the profession is like it is, which I think it will be, and by that I mean, yes, we have teacher training courses, but they tend to do enough just to get you in the door, and you have to grow with experience, but you need this continual professional development, and people need directions in how they grow. I think that this job will be around for a long time. Maybe not exactly the way that I'm doing it right now, and it may not be my job, but I think the need for it will definitely continue to be there.
Okay, that's interesting. And now I've actually, speaking of teacher training, I've seen a few of your presentations.
Uh-oh.
And for people who who are watching this video, Alan is one of the most dynamic and exciting and enthusiastic presenters I've ever seen. He's got a very great stage presence and a lot of showmanship. So I'm wondering, Alan, can you give us some tips for people who would like to improve their presentation skills?
Even though you got the man of presentation skills on the bottom of my
Well,
Zoom right here, Mr.
Curtis.
Kurt. I mean, so he could give some tips as well. But I think look, the easiest way to have passion is to make sure you believe what you're saying. Don't fake it. That's it. Gosh, we think our students can smell a fake. Teachers in an audience can smell a fake, even further than students can. I think that I think you need to be an expert in what you do, but while you present on it. And being an expert to me means you've made at least 8 mistakes you can reflect on, and each one of them in the back, so you know what you've learned from each mistake. Because I think that passion and those things that come up, and those stories that I tell, that comes from, I'm not trying to tell you how to teach, I'm trying to tell you how I screwed up. And if that relates to you and you can learn that way, that might help you more than me flying in and parachuting in and saying do it this way and then parachuting out. I think that the passion comes from learning how to, and I'm not great at it, but just learning how to truly reflect and think about what would I need to hear from this presentation. And then it just kind of flows because you're in it. I mean, it's it's what Csikszentmihalyi, or I can't say his last name right. You get in a flow even during a presentation, and that flow comes in when you know that the people are there to listen to your topic, and your topic, and we're just going to do this, and that's what carries you on. I can't answer it in any better than that. I mean, it's not any, walk 2 to the left and then shout and then go down. I mean, it's not prescriptive like that. The other thing I'd say that people should do if you want to be a good presenter is, if you know 100% about the topic that you're presenting on, only try to present on 20% of it, because being able to explain one part of it well will get them more curious and interesting to go in it. I think a lot of people who do get passionate, they try to overdo it and try to say everything and do too much,
Right.
instead of just giving one little nugget, and trust your audience. Trust your audience to get curious and inspired by you, especially since so many of my presentations are 30 minutes or an hour, or maybe even up to a 3-hour training session. You cannot save the world in 3 hours, but you can hopefully inspire people to get onto one of those nuggets so they can get their own motivation to want to learn more about it as well. I don't know if that has anything to do with the social brain or not, but I'd like to think that it does, that we're all into it together.
That's very cool.
I have no need to make this all about myself. I mean, again, Curtis, if you want to jump in with something, you're a fantastic presenter as well. How do you do it? You don't mind, Lindsay, if we invite
go ahead.
Curtis in?
I also want to point out, Curtis does have a few questions that have popped up in the chat.
Oh, he would.
But yes, by all means.
I'm not a natural presenter, so I spend a lot of time preparing, writing it out, throwing away the manuscript. Maybe one presentation takes weeks to get together. Do you have the ability to just kind of start talking about something and being able to do it, or do you just spend a lot of preparation time? Or you seem to be a much more natural speaker than I am.
It's not that it's natural, but for every point I want to make in an outline when I'm putting together a presentation, I think that I need one of what I call, I need an R, a D, or an E. I need a reason, a detail, or an example. And so I just want to make
Good.
sure that with whatever I do, I have a firm reason, detail, or example for bringing that point. And if I cannot think of a reason for saying it, if I cannot find a detail that makes it interesting, or an example of how that's been anecdotally, like a personal example, like something from then I skip that point, because I firmly believe that when somebody's watching a presentation, they don't want you to read something to them. They can read themselves. You're there for a different reason. And so that's what I try to do. And like I said, you just collect stories. What's resonated most with teachers, I think, when I'm in front of them, are just stories, like I said, of how I've
Exactly.
screwed
Yeah.
up so much. And it's, what is it, Lisa Krant, wired for stories?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so much. And I think that the powers of incorporating a story, even a story that may at first not seem to fit, it works. Can I tell you my favorite story that I often use in presentations? Do we
Yes.
have time?
Yes.
But
Yes.
it's true, and I get so much from it. But what I love about it was this actually happened. And I call it the story of how, one of the biggest mistakes that I ever made. And it was in an EAP class, and I have the story down pat. This is a pattern that I use because it's honed, but it's true. I had a student named Rex. And Rex was a funny guy. I mean, you know how you have those students that are funny in their own language and they try to be funny. And I mean, they just have a funny personality. One time he came into class and he said, Alan, I had a dream last night and everybody was speaking English. And I said, that's great, Rex. What was your dream about? And he said, I don't know. They were all speaking English. I couldn't understand anything. I mean, he was just, and he had practiced that joke, but it was funny. But one time in class, Rex was, he was doing a reading or something like that. It was an EAP class, like I said, and he came up with his book, and he had trouble with a with a with a word or some vocabulary thing, and he said, Alan, what does this mean? And I thought I was being such a good teacher. I said, Rex, it means that we have spent a lot of money on really expensive dictionaries in the back of the room. You need to go look up the word. And he got mad, not angry mad, but we all teach in Asia. You know what I mean if I say Asian mad, that smile and that sort of thing. And he just kind of said, why won't you tell me what the answer is? I just need it to get on with my reading. And I said, Rex, and these are my exact words. I said, Rex, you can give a man a fish and he eats for a day, but you can teach a man to fish and he eats for a lifetime. And Rex looked at me and he said, give me the fish. Which was a funny story, but on reflecting on that story, think about what was happening to me. I mean, at that time, I was so into learner autonomy, and I was so into that was I expecting too much? Was I doing it at the wrong time? He was asking for a bit of support, not because he was dumb, not because he didn't know how to teach himself. I mean, he had practiced that joke before. I mean, he liked English, he got it. He was just wanting to get on with the task, and I thought I was being such a good teacher, but at that time, I was being a barrier to his learning, because I put some value of self-regulated learning above just, providing the answer or coaching or giving that little nudge. And then that's how I got kind of involved in nudge theory, and why I love nudge theory in education, because there's a difference between this and that. It all connects, but we think about our own critical incidents. You think, what did I learn? And then the research comes where you learn and you put it on top of that, not the other way around. And that's where I think you get it. If you want to be a dynamic or good presenter, think of your 6 or 7 most emotional times in class. And when I say emotional, it can be happy, sad, angry, afraid, disgusted. Think of those, and then put the theory on what happened and what you learned from it. And I think most people will follow along and let you obloviate an answer, just as I've done now. But those stories are the connection. And I would rather somebody remember that story and one thing about checking, what they think about learner autonomy, than try to give 15 bullet points of learner autonomy. You give one good nugget of that they can reflect on, instead of trying to read the whole book to them. That's what I think, anyway.
Absolutely. I had a speech trainer for like 2 days. I attended a seminar, and he said, make your presentation 80% story and only 20% explaining, which seems like a lot of story to put together, but it makes sense. People are built for stories.
Yeah.
Explaining kind of hits our working memory part of our brain, but stories hits everything. The social,
Exactly.
emotional, and the working memory parts. Yeah.
But stories don't always have to be that long drawn out thing. I mean,
Mhm.
one thing that I consider a story in my technology presentation is I show a picture of a cassette tape and a pencil. And I say there are two types of people in this room: those who know the connection between these two objects and those who will never know frustration. And that's because those of us of a certain age have all been there, right? Or that sort of thing. And but to me that clicks the story element, not because it's just a funny joke, but it's not a story that I told, but we all go to our own internal stories,
Yeah.
and we all have a flashback to a time where we're winding that cassette tape with the pencil. Or the other people who are clueless, they look, what, they go around, and then somebody else in the audience says, oh, that's never, you don't know, oh, they fell apart all the time, you know that sort of thing. So don't think that a story is always a once upon the time 5-minute diatribe like I've given. A story is just that connection that has a beginning and an end in our mind, that has a symbolic nature. Anyway, Lisa Cron, right, I think that's her name. Wired for Stories. Excellent book. I need to write these down so yeah, you'll need to send me the video so I can go back and make sure that I have all of these references right.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely send you the video, and anytime you want to add, we can.
Before you post it on the YouTube, because I don't want people, where was that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
You said Curtis had some questions. I think we got.
The first one I think you've already answered, and the second one is, how do you present on a book that you've never used in class?
I try to trial it first. Presenting on a book. Whenever we present, quote unquote, on a book, it's how can I say this diplomatically? Each book has something that makes it different from other books. And you're really only presenting on that aspect. There's not much difference between, uh, this book and the other book I have on the grammar exercises or the present perfect. It's the same present perfect in all that book, and that's where those experiences come in. What's different about a book might be the author's take on, trying to bring in a task-based learning approach, or it might be on this other, some other methodological. And so you try to present that. And then in my workshops, at least, I always try to make sure that there's a bit of micro teaching, to where, I've presented on what this is, but now can we get into groups and you look at this and say, how would you lesson plan this? Look, it's called, when I do presentations of textbooks in schools, I let them know it's a workshop. And I love workshops because that means they do the work. That's the point of a workshop. So, I mean, you really try to make it exploring. If it's an absolutely totally new book and I just don't know a lot about it, we'll do a book scavenger hunt together. We'll idea it. But what you don't try to do is BS somebody and pretend like, it's all going to work. And when
You
it
said
doesn't.
you said you trial it. How do you try to
I
meet, like, you do the activities by yourself or try it with somebody else? I find
oh
it really
so,
hard to
so
understand what a book's going to be like until I've actually used it in my classes. So
Sometimes I'll grab some people in the office and I'll say, can I just teach you English for 50 minutes? I still have a connection at my, you laugh. No, I mean, you've got to have authenticity in this. If you don't have authenticity, you've got nothing.
no,
Nothing. I
your
mean,
your stock value just went up. You're about ready to split. That was good.
well, no. I also have a good relationship with old colleagues in Thailand. The hardest ones for me to teach on, to be honest with you, are the primary ones, because I don't get to trial those realistically. And it's a lot of, you can't say, hey, I just want to go into your class of 6-year-olds for a while. That doesn't quite work. So I'm going to say that I do fake it a bit more with the primary stuff, but with the adult or the IELTS or the even secondary, there's no reason that you can't trial it out and just see the flow of an activity. And from there, I'd like to think it's not my first time at the rodeo. 15 years of experience and thinking about certain students you've had and what would be the issues, and go in and trusting that is part of it as well. What's amazing to me when I go around and around is so many people say, will come up to me and be like, I want your job. How do I get it? And I'll ask, how many years have you been teaching? And they'll say about a year or two. And I'll be like, oh, you haven't made enough mistakes yet. And that's, but that's really, because each mistake is each mistake prepares you for the oh dear moment of a book. These are just books, and I think Cambridge makes some of the best books in the world, but they're just books. And you put the best book in the hands of a teacher who's not prepared, it's not going to be a great class. Or if you put a crap book in the hands of a good teacher, it's going to be a great class. This is just a tool. And so when I present a book, I'm presenting a tool, but I'm not trying to tell the artist or the craftsman use the tool this way. Did that answer your question, Curtis? I mean,
Yes, very well. Thank you.
that's
That's
it.
brilliant.
Absolutely. And I think that
2 for 1 split.
yeah, absolutely. But that element of authenticity, I think, also definitely contributes to it being a very good presentation and people accepting what you're saying. Because I've been to presentations by people who don't have much experience, or they're presenting on a book, but they've never taught before. And I can just see the audience members, as soon as they hear that the person has never taught or they haven't taught this book, they're just like, nope.
Well, that's where you don't come in and you don't say that it's that book. I had a situation the last time that I was in Japan, actually, where they kind of wanted the teachers to adopt, I'm not gonna lie, a writing book, but that I had never taught and didn't know about it. I mean, Japanese market sometimes gets, it wasn't Writing from Within. I'm sorry, Curtis, but a great book, Writing from Within. You should all go out and get it. The point is, what was my point? Oh yeah, the point is, you don't try to go in. So what I did was I did a workshop on giving written corrective feedback and what we know about that, and then we just talked about that, and it was so funny because it was one of the times that I could see that school or that audience was just so used to publishers, not Cambridge, I hope, coming in and selling something. Because when I said any questions, there were a couple of questions, and then one guy in the back raised his hand. He said, so which book are you selling? And I'm like, this doesn't have anything to do with the book. And he's like, I mean, you could just see the confusion in his eyes, like, what do you mean? And I'm like, Hachime just brought me here because he thought that this workshop would be good for you. I mean, if you want to talk about books, he knows Japan more than I do. I've never taught in Japan in my life, but these are things that I think would work for you, and that's it. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't sell, but if anything, I try to sell good methodology, and I think, you sell that way.
That
As,
is
as,
what
as Curtis will tell.
That's what builds trust with Cambridge. I'll still never forget. Must have been like sometime after the Nichido Senso, the Russo-Japan War. Ivan Sorrentino came to my school, which was my previous school. And we're having a talk with teachers, and this teacher says, well, what should I use? Could I use this book for drama class or for presentation class? A book that he was showing around. He said, no, I don't think this is the one, but there's this other publisher that has a really good book. You ought to look at that. That moment, the teacher's there. I could see this like aura of this mist of trust coming out of their heads and enveloping the room. And I'll never forget that moment, how that particular, those 15 seconds really sealed Cambridge as a dependable, trustful, on our side publisher, which is so different from everywhere else.
I mean, we do have a sales team and we have a focus, but even from the top, our sales director used to say, never close a sale, but lose a customer.
Hmm.
And I think that is meant from the top down at Cambridge. But, to me, it's yeah, I mean, we have that philosophy. Have you ever seen Miracle on 34th Street? Kind of the same concept where Macy's starts sending people, the Santa Claus starts sending people to other stores, and at first they're like, what are you doing? But then it is that trust and that sort of thing, because Cambridge University Press itself, and I'll say the same thing with OUP, they're built on these institutions of of age and trust and integrity, and you don't want to be the person that screws that up.
Well, that's really interesting. All right, so we're down to our last 6 minutes or so. So I've got a question for both of you.
Yay.
If you don't mind, Curtis. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with teaching, because this is an AMA. It can go through any part of life and experience. But what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
For teaching?
No, for anything in your life. You can do two, one for teaching and one for life, or just sure for teaching.
Did I have to follow it?
No. Maybe something you wish you had followed. That's possible.
Wow, that's a big one, Alan.
Look, I don't know if it's the best piece of advice I've ever gotten. You don't, you don't, you don't move to Asia and wind up staying here teaching English because you followed advice of people. But
There's that.
but
Yeah.
I would say, you know, my favorite thing that's just so true to this day, and I always think that people are familiar with it, and they're not, because it just shows how old that I was. But you know, when I graduated from college, there was this really like powerful poem that kind of got made into a music video sort of thing, and I think that you know, the piece of advice that it came, it was like, this was advice like youth, probably just wasted on the young, comes from the song which was called the Sunscreen Song. And if you're not familiar with it, I got it. You all talk amongst yourselves. I have to give you this one
Okay,
line, but
I'll
this
give
is one I
you.
want to get it exactly right.
So do you want me to give my advice? The change.
Yes.
It was actually, I think, advice for teaching, if it's teaching, but also for living in Japan, which is, if something seems wrong, weird, bad, or any other kind of negative emotion, it's probably you, not the thing. It means you don't understand it well enough. And that means you have a place to grow. I like that. You have a place to grow.
I love that.
That's beautiful.
Very
Again, my job is less creativity and more synthesizing and collecting quotes. I think Oscar Wilde said, you know, quote is a serviceable substitute for wit. But here's the thing that that I go back to and I need to be reminded of, and I'll leave you this, and it's not my own. It's from that Wear Sunscreen, and we'll link to that in the video. I hope to. Anyway, here we go. Don't worry about the future, or worry, but know that worrying is as effective as trying to solve an algebra equation by chewing bubble gum. The real troubles in your life are apt to be things that never crossed your worried mind, the kind of thing that blindside you at 4 p.m. on some idle Tuesday.
That's very nice. Like a pandemic. Hey.
Like a pandemic.
Like
Yeah,
a
I mean, who would have
pandemic,
thought
yeah,
this? Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. I mean, but it's full of so much good advice. Keep your old love letters. Throw away your old bank statements. Don't feel guilty if you don't know what you want to do with the rest of your life. The most interesting people I know didn't know at 22 what they wanted to do with their lives. Some of the most interesting 40-year-olds I know still don't. Truer words never spoken.
Very true.
It's good. It's good. Are we going to ask Lindsay what her advice she got?
Yeah, Lindsay, what's your best piece of advice that you ever got?
When I wrote down that question, I was thinking, well, I really like the advice I got that said, if there's something you can do that'll take 5 minutes or less, don't put it on your to-do list, just do it. But now my advice seems so lame compared to yours.
No,
yours is practical. I mean,
that's the one I didn't follow.
Well, that's funny.
I don't know.
Those pieces of advice much more from both of you.
Well, no, but it's just, advice. What's lovely about, I mean, you get, advice is great, but it's people wrapping up their, wiping off their own memories and trying to sell them for more than it's worth. I think that comes there. But I think, the beautiful thing is, take the advice, but make your own choices. Because the wonderful thing about life is it will let you keep on making the same mistake until you learn from it.
That's very true too.
I am who I am because of all the mistakes that I've made.
Yeah. That's we got to write that down somewhere. That's pretty good. You're not gonna die soon, are you? Because I can't put it on a tombstone.
I hope not. I mean, but again, you never
that's what we
know.
want to put on your tombstone. Be good for something like that. Yeah.
But again,
I am who I am because of all the mistakes I've made.
Yeah, I mean, both of you are experts in this field. You didn't get to where you are, because you did everything perfect. It's about growing and learning and reflecting and getting up one more time than you're knocked down. You think mistake instead of mistake. And that's what gets people where you are. I just worry that people look at us, like even the three of us, and think, oh, they've got all of their shite together. They know everything they do. If only I could be like them. And as we know, all talking between us, sometimes we're making it up as we go as well. It's just we've learned that to leave you with one final quote, I think from, Winston Churchill, success is never final, but failure is never fatal. You keep on going on. I'm a mass of quotes, no original ideas up in here, but it's got me this far.
Those are great quotes. Curtis, would you like to leave us with a final thought too, as long as you're here?
Well, all that I am is a compendium of my mistakes. Did I say that right?
I am who I am because of all the mistakes I made. I don't know.
I am who I am because of all the mistakes I made.
No, that's lower level English.
Yeah, that really resonates with me too. People say, "Oh, you're a good presenter." Nobody knows that first presentation I did at Jolt 33 years ago was so bad because I didn't know how to prepare. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have anything written out. I just said, "Oh, I'll just talk about something I'm interested in." I stopped it after 2 hours and said, "Go home." And everybody looked so miserable, and my mouth was dry. Oh, it was just a complete disaster. So
the bad thing we have in this Hollywoodization of this idea of how lives are supposed to be is even movies that show progress or somebody achieving things usually has a montage of lots of bad things happening, which is usually humorous, and it's done with some peppy music. And life doesn't work that way. If you took away that music and slowed down that montage, there's a lot of pain and a lot of struggle and a lot of regret that goes on in there. And we think that people's lives aren't filled with that day to day, and they are, but it's what you do with it.
And if you read in history about people that had these great successes, they're almost always on the point of failure at some time. And I remember Steve Martin, the comedian, saying, he did a lot of Broadway productions and things, and he said, this is another one that's affected me a lot. Any project you get engaged in, there's going to be this time when everything's falling apart and you're sure it's going to die, but just stick through it because it always comes back. Every project has this valley time. And I think that's right.
That's very optimistic. I like that. That seems like a good note to end on, unless you want to add anything in there, Alan.
No, I just want to say thank you to Curtis for coming and joining, and always a pleasure.
I wanted to, it was on my calendar to come earlier. I'm so sorry about that, but I was out for a bicycle ride in the sun, got all sunny and sleepy.
No worries. Well, thank you for coming.
And thank you, Lindsay. And I was going to say thank you, Lindsay, for arranging this. It's been, it flew by.
Both of you are my heroes. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming, Alan. Thank you for stopping by. Curtis, don't hang up, gentlemen. I'm going to stop the recording. But thank you so much. And I'm sure our viewers are grateful for you too. So thanks.